Good afternoon, everyone. Josh's Severe Weather, and we're going to get right to it. Hurricane Milton is now a very powerful Category 5 hurricane, and right now the track takes it right into Tampa Bay, a very dangerous situation. And in my opinion, this could be one of Florida's worst natural disasters based on where it's hitting and what has already happened. And this is the time to prepare now. I would rather you all be over-prepared than not. I realize this is highly stressful, and I'm going to do my best as a meteorologist to try to give you the clarity that you need to make the most informed decisions. That is my assignment today. That is to prepare you for maybe the worst case scenario, and maybe hopefully we can see just get some sort of grace from the absolute worst portion of this storm. But right now, very dangerous Category 5 hurricane that went from Category 1 last night to Category 5 and is still strengthening, by the way, may still come in stronger than all of what our forecast models are showing. The storm is approaching the north coast of the Yucatan, but it's a very small storm, only 80 miles wide, which is going to allow it to slide through the hottest part of the Gulf, avoid landfall, although create some fringe effects here on the north coast of the Yucatan, and then accelerate northeast as it gets picked up by a trough and a cold front that swing in, and that is going to take the storm right to the central coast of Florida. Now, there's still going to be some potential for this to come north or south a little bit, and that may make a massive difference in the Tampa Bay area. Obviously, if it comes a little bit farther south of the bay, the worst of the storm surge gets pushed south into places like Bradenton, Sarasota, all the way down towards Charlotte and Lee counties. But if it goes a little farther north, maybe towards Pasco County, that is going to bring the absolute worst wind and storm surge into the Bay Area. And we're not going to know exactly how that's going to play out just yet with a couple of days to go, but we have a pretty good idea right now and a confident forecast that this is going to be a stronger storm as it comes in here. So let's take a look at the current map. And right now, Milton is really the only thing I'm obsessing about at this point that I'm worried about. Kirk is no longer tropical. The remains head towards France. Leslie, no threat to land. We may have another system here in the eastern Gulf of Mexico. And here's our satellite image. And you can see right now, Milton, not a very big storm. The models do not do very well with small systems on the larger scale until we get to these hurricane models. So as a result, what was being forecast a few days ago is just kind of completely missing what was going on across this very small area. By the way, we could have a tropical system forming on the Mexican side, but that will not impact Milton at all. It's actually going to head up towards Cabo. We do have low pressure here, which is bringing a predecessor heavy rain event into South Florida today, which is not what you want to see in South Florida. We've had a lot of rain and more coming. This actually, as it gets over to the Atlantic side, has a small chance of becoming a tropical system, believe it or not, but it is heading away at that point. You'll want to watch it a little bit in Bermuda, but right now, nothing strong at this point. Really, it's Milton that we need to be most concerned with that takes this track either here or in here, and that bend is going to be super important. This is Hurricane Leslie, no threat to land. This is extratropical system Kirk, heading towards northwest Portugal and western France. And this is the area that could become our next system, but again, no threat to land at this point. And we're going to take a quick look at the end, but we've got time. There is the potential for another system to try to get going here in about a week and a half or so. But that is awfully far off in time to get too specific with. Obviously, we got to watch it, though. All right, so here is a look at our powerful system. Milton winds are at least 160 miles per hour, possibly stronger as aircraft continue to go through the storm. And you can see the wind shear is not very strong. The system is small and it's maneuvering itself over the hottest part of the Gulf. And that's why it strengthened so quickly. This is a small but extremely dynamic system. And as it moves into an area of higher wind shear towards the middle of the week up in here, it is going to grow in size. It's going to go from about this big now to at least this big in 2 days. It is expected to weaken due to that wind shear, but we don't know quite yet how exactly that's going to play out. And the bigger storms are the ones that create larger amounts of storm surge. Hurricane Katrina was a bigger storm than this, but it was a Category 5. It did weaken to a 3 when it hit Mississippi and Louisiana. Nonetheless, because of the size of the system, it created all sorts of storm surge, flooding, and wind damage. Just to give you an idea of what a 5 going down to a 3 could be. And it's not a guarantee this gets all the way down to 3. It could get only down to a 4. I don't want you to get too obsessed about the 2, the 3, and the 4. I think you need to be more concerned about the size of this system, the speed it's moving in, the angle it's hitting the coast, and the effect it's going to have well inland as it crosses portions of central and maybe northern Florida here Wednesday into Thursday. So that's what we're looking at here. Real quick, I do want to mention that we are seeing significant rain moving into South Florida. And fortunately, this is staying south of the projected path of Milton, but we could see some very heavy rain across the Florida Keys and near and south of Alligator Alley, and especially along the Tamiami Trail here this afternoon into tonight. There is going to be a potential for some flash flooding, and that's going to impact those of you here in southeastern Florida, especially from Broward County all the way down to the Keys. We could see some significant rain here later today, tonight, and first thing tomorrow. There's a weak low-pressure system here, and it's expected to go right over you, and then may have a slight chance to develop into a tropical depression or storm, believe it or not, after it leaves. Here's a look at the infrared that kind of shows you how that's playing out here. This is our cold front stretched right in here and then kind of back down in this direction. There's our weak area of low pressure. It's going to get tucked in just south of the front and move in this direction. Bermuda is right over here. And then Milton is just off the map, but it's over here, and it's going to kind of follow suit here, although it is expected to make more of a bend in this direction. And I'm going to go more over that here in just a bit for you all. Here's the upper level look at the mid and upper levels of the atmosphere. This is the water vapor image, shows us how much moisture is there, helps us see where storms are being geared. And there's a weak shortwave trough in here that's moving in this direction, but then a bigger trough, kind of see this black bend right in here. That is eventually going to be what pulls Milton more to the north and west and aims it in this direction instead of heading into deep south parts of Florida and the Keys. That is time to make its way into the Eastern Gulf on Wednesday. And as it gets into the Eastern Gulf, it is going to start to bring some wind shear into the system. But we don't know exactly yet how that interaction is going to play out. The models do show weakening as a whole, but they don't tell you with confidence yet how weak it will get. Another thing I'm going to show you in a minute is that the models have underestimated how quickly this storm has gotten together. So their launching point is too low on intensity, and what the eventual intensity ends up being could end up being too low based on what we're seeing here. So very impressive looking system. You can see it is in the very last frame, it has begun to start to bend back in this direction. So we're not expecting a direct impact on the Yucatan. The size of the storm is really right about here. Let me get my eraser out. Let's see if I can try. That's all right. So the storm really is right in here. It's like 80 miles wide, tropical storm force. The hurricane force winds are about 30 miles wide, a very small but powerful box. You can see it's starting to make this bend in this direction here. So it is expected to scrape the coast with tropical storm to maybe hurricane force winds somewhere in here, but it's going to be close. The strongest winds are going to be coming around on the east side and will go right over this reef over here. I believe it's called Scorpion Reef, which does not have inhabitants, but it is a nature preserve, and they're going to get crushed with extreme wind here tonight. After that, we are going to see the bend more in this direction as that trough begins to create more of a west-southwest to southwesterly flow. And all the models agree on that. Now you can see here the recon has been flying through the storm, and the pressure has fallen significantly. In fact, let me find it for you here. This was an image I took here when I woke up this morning at like 6 in the morning. And it was just getting to category 3. It was a category 2 when I got up at 5 a.m. And then a category 3. The pressure drop went from 955 4 hours ago to 925 here recently. That is a 30 millibar drop in 4 hours. That is extreme. That is what I was predicting yesterday, but I'll be honest with you, it's actually stronger than what I was predicting. It's really hard to forecast something like that. But what you will notice here in the most recent development is that it is starting to finally stop losing latitude, and I don't think it's going to go directly into the Yucatan here. If you look at the wind data that's coming off of our aircraft earlier, you will see that the instrument they're using to measure wind is picking up on wind gusts that are very close to 175 knots. That would be about 205 to 210 miles per hour. Those are wind gusts. The flight level winds are at about 160 knots. We typically take about 15% off to measure how much is going on the ground. So it is measuring At flight level, winds that are 190 miles per hour, which down to the surface drops to about 160. And that measurement was taken here at about 11:40 this morning, Eastern time, 10:40 Central. You can also see that the eye cleared out and dried out significantly. Look at this big difference here between the temperature and the dew point, indicating a very healthy core of this system, one that does not look like it's going to weaken anytime in the next maybe half day to day. Now, the Hurricane Center says the system will make its closest approach to the Yucatan tonight. There's a hurricane warning here for a lot of the Yucatan. There's a hurricane watch and tropical storm warning down to Campeche. And we have tropical storm warnings all the way through the northeastern Yucatan to Cancun. On this track right now, the storm will stay just offshore and should not weaken because of that. It's small enough to be able to pull that. But if it does come a little farther south towards Progreso, we could see powerful hurricane force wind, and that could reduce the intensity of our storm. It may actually cause some weakening sooner. But right now, the official forecast is for it to go below Category 4, 5 strength to a Category 4 tomorrow night around sunset or just beyond, and then weaken considerably as it comes in. But still, we are predicting a major Category 3 strike on St. Petersburg here. You can kind of see that Pinellas Park here. This takes St. Petersburg and Tampa in the very bad part of our system here. Intense wind expected, and that time frame will be Wednesday night. So today is a day you need to be considering getting out of here because tomorrow the storm will be getting closer, and by Wednesday it'll become too late. Now, inland areas, we are still going to have a hurricane rolling through here. It's not going to weaken significantly. It will be weakening, but right now the current track takes the worst of that towards the Orlando area, Oviedo, Deltona, Sanford, and all the way over here towards New Smyrna Beach, Ponce Inlet, and even Daytona. At this point, we still have a hurricane that is moving through overnight and into Thursday morning. It will be a Category 1 as it comes offshore here north of the Space Coast by Thursday morning, and then we'll lose tropical characteristics. But there is spread here, and anybody in the cone here could still see a hurricane, and that gets you all the way down to near Fort Myers. This is Cape Coral. Here's Fort Myers. So you are technically still in the cone at Fort Myers Beach. You're definitely in the cone here in Manatee, Sarasota, and Charlotte counties. Inland areas are in the cone as well. Lake Okeechobee has a hurricane watch now posted. We have tropical storm watch all the way down to the Keys. And I do think we'll have a tropical storm watch posted here for the southeastern part of Florida and maybe the northwest Bahamas, depending on if this track shifts any farther south. It may not, but that is what we're looking at. On the north side of this storm, we've got a hurricane watch up to the Big Bend and a tropical storm watch all the way over to Apalachicola as the system will grow in size. The same areas that got hit with Helene here a week and a half ago are going to be under a tropical storm watch and eventually a warning, and that does include Perry and Taylor County. We could see inland hurricane watches and warnings all the way up to Gainesville, Ocala certainly, even Jacksonville, St. Augustine, and those areas, Palm Coast, Palatka, those areas could end up being in a hurricane watch and eventually hurricane warning. And the storm doesn't just stop here. We could see tropical storm watches and warnings for the Georgia coastline and even places like Savannah, Brunswick, St. Simon's Island, down into southeast Georgia. I think when we get up to the Carolinas, we're probably okay at this point, but we still want to keep a close eye on it if we're near the coast. So here's a view of what the graphic is showing. It brings our storm over the hottest part of the Gulf. That's this area right here. And then we go into slightly cooler waters near the coast, but the storm will be accelerating and moving more quickly at that point. The good news is that after it leaves here, instead of re-strengthening, it's going to lose tropical characteristics and merge with a front as it comes towards Bermuda here towards the end of the week and the weekend. It'll be a non-tropical system. You can see the Gulf waters here are 29 to 30 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 86 to 88. Well, that was Celsius, 86 to 88 Fahrenheit. So a lot of heat here in the waters. And here is that update that came in just before lunchtime that we have a Category 5 hurricane. So we went from a tropical depression Saturday morning to a hurricane yesterday afternoon to a Category 5 here. Just jaw-dropping to see that kind of intensification. So I'm going to let you all read this on the screen. Feel free to go to the Hurricane Center's website to see this. The hurricane watch, though, for Florida goes from Chokoloskee to the mouth of the Suwannee River, and that includes all of Tampa Bay. We have that for Lake Okeechobee, for the dry Tortugas as well. We have a storm surge watch from Flamingo northward to the mouth of the Suwannee River, and that includes inland waters of Charlotte Harbor and Tampa Bay. We do have a tropical storm watch in effect from the Gulf Coast south of Chokoloskee down to Flamingo, for the Gulf Coast north of the mouth of the Suwannee River all the way to Indian Pass. That includes all the Big Bend and the Forgotten Coast, and for all of the Florida Keys, including Florida Bay, and hurricane watch for dry Tortugas as well. I don't know if folks live there, but anyway, just remarkable at this point, with the fact that we've had the winds go up by 90 miles per hour in 24 hours. The only time we've seen that in our records is from Hurricane Wilma in 2005 and Felix in 2007. Wilma, of course, was a powerful October Gulf storm as well, taking a slightly different track, though. In fact, that got strong down in the Caribbean, weakened as it hit the Yucatan, and then re-strengthened in the southeastern Gulf. Kind of taking a similar track, but that one was farther south down the coast into direct southern Florida. So special messages here. Let me update this for you all. The damaging hurricane force winds we're expecting on the north coast today of the Yucatan, damaging storm surge as well there. But it's going to get really bad here for the Florida Peninsula Tuesday night and early Wednesday. Storm surge and hurricane watches are now in effect. We're going to see a lot of rain well ahead of Milton today, then more heavy rain Tuesday through Wednesday night, causing the threat for significant flooding. And here's our storm surge forecast showing higher storm surges in Tampa Bay than what we received with Helene. And I realize a lot of you in the Tampa Bay area took on a ton of damage from Helene because of its size. 8 to 12 feet would pretty much be unprecedented, at least in modern history. Farther south, a lot of storm surges coming as well. Places that were hit hard by Hurricane Ian are going to see at least 5 feet of storm surge, if not 10 feet. All the way down from Bonita Beach to Chokoloskee, 4 to 7 feet of storm surge. That is basically the first level of many of your homes. And north of where the storm comes in, the Big Bend will see more storm surge, unfortunately. I'd love to say that won't be the case, but a big storm by the time it hits, and we could see up to 3 feet of storm surge around the Big Bend as well. Our storm hits Wednesday morning near the coast. It starts going downhill Wednesday afternoon, and then especially Wednesday night, and then it's already moving offshore by Thursday morning. Flooding risk is moderate across the entire northern peninsula, even into southeast Georgia, and then from our flooding today across the Miami area. I don't think Miami sees a whole lot more flooding from Milton. It'll be from this system today. Here's our rainfall forecast. A lot of places will pick up 8 inches or more of rain. We just don't need any inch at this point. Looking at the future of our storm, it still has a chance of strengthening by as much as 40 knots between now and tomorrow morning. That's 3 times the climatological average. 40 knots would be 160 knots, which is about 192 miles per hour. There's a chance that still gets that strong. More than likely, it's more in this range, kind of a mid-level Category 5, but just incredible at this point. And the reason why it's going to continue to strengthen is that it will still have favorable waters here. Heat content is good. Ocean moisture is good. Sea surface temperatures are hot, and wind shear remains low into tomorrow. It doesn't really come up and start impacting the storm, we don't think, until we get to tomorrow night. And by then, we're within 24 hours of landfall. Very serious situation, unfortunately, here. The model guidance continues to be in pretty good agreement here. I'll show you some close-ups, but I do not trust the pink and the blue models. They do not know how strong this storm is. The main cluster is all within 50 miles of Tampa Bay on both sides. Pretty good agreement. Intensity forecast, it already is a Category 5, so throw these away. And we still have some strengthening possible in the next 24 hours before it levels off. The big question mark is how strong is it going to be when it hits? And you will see there's going to be a rapid decline, but it may not drop off quite as quickly as modeled here, and that's something we need to be alert for. The time frame for landfall is going to be in here, so we still have potentially a Category 3 or even 4 hurricane at that point. This is kind of our landfall point, so Category 4 is still in play here, and I would prepare for that. I don't think we'll have a Category 5. I think the best case scenario is it gets down to Category 2 and comes in later, but more than likely a 3 or even a 4 at this point when it makes landfall. Here's the GFS model showing you it makes the bend to the left here. It's still strengthening on the GFS right up until Wednesday evening at 8 o'clock, and then it levels off and starts to weaken quickly by the time it moves onshore, and it will be a weaker system as it turns to the right and moves out to sea. If we take a look here at the humidity and the moisture, you can see there's dry air surrounding the storm, but it doesn't get in there before Wednesday morning. In fact, it just starts to wrap in here on Wednesday evening as the storm is getting ready to move on shore. So the GFS says the surroundings of the storm are not going to be enough to weaken it significantly. And that is a scary thought at this point. Doesn't mean it's going to happen that way. It could be underdoing the amount of dry air that eventually gets in here, but definitely a serious situation. And I would prepare for the absolute worst just in case. Here's the HAFS model, takes the system right over Scorpion Reef here this evening, and then pulls away from the Yucatan tomorrow around this time in the afternoon. It's still strengthening the system. It's got it going down to 912, and it's launching it way too low, way too weak here. It's showing that's a Category 3 when it's already a 5, so it's got it strengthening even more, which is very scary. We may get to a point, though, where the storm gets strong enough where it has to level off. It has to replace its eye wall. And that's probably going to happen sooner than what the HAVS model is showing, I would expect. But this is still a Category 5 that is within 200 miles of the coast of Florida. Then it comes down to a 4, and you can see the at landfall, it's weakening more steadily, but it's not a weak system. This is a very powerful Category 3 that eventually weakens over land and produces hurricane force winds well inland all the way through the Orlando area, and then a tropical storm by the time it's moving away from the coast here on Friday morning, Thursday night, Friday morning. Looking at wind potential here, extreme, 180 mile per hour wind gusts possible, maybe 190. According to this HAVS model, they come down slightly here into the 170s Wednesday morning, but my goodness. And then Wednesday afternoon down to 150, but the storm is getting ready to move on shore. And then Wednesday night, even 115 mile per hour wind gusts getting up into the Tampa Bay area. Just that's extreme. And then on the backside of the storm here, you can see that while the system is moving towards Daytona here early in the morning on Thursday, we still have hurricane force winds on the backlash due to the jet stream interaction. Hurricane force winds in Jacksonville, in Gainesville, in Ocala, and even all the way over towards places like Citrus County. On the backside, after the storm passes, we see some incredible wind. We also see some stronger winds south and east of the storm, but I think at this point, it's not going to be quite so bad on the East Coast as it is across northern Florida, based on what I'm seeing here. In fact, we may see stronger winds in Savannah than we see in Palm Beach, depending on how this tracks. So keep that in mind. Here is a look at the real nerdy stuff, so you all can see how this storm is structured, and just a small, tightly wound, powerful storm that grows in size. It starts growing here on Wednesday morning, and you can see on this projected radar, oh, by the way, there will be embedded tornadoes within this circulation well in advance of our storm. That could start sometime Wednesday morning across the Central Peninsula, maybe even into northeastern Florida. And then here's our landfall, and it's a much bigger storm. Take a look at this upper left. The storm weakens, but it grows. And that's the bigger concern here, is that more folks get impacted, especially those of you that get impacted by Helene. And it continues to grow, but weakens significantly by Friday morning as it's no longer a threat. Rainfall from the HUR model, incredibly high here, potentially 15 inches plus down in Monroe County in the Everglades with this first system. And this is just between now and Wednesday morning. We could see several inches of rain in South Florida. And then as the storm kicks in, we see amounts over 10 inches potentially, and just a really nasty situation here. Real quick, I'll talk about the rest of the tropics, but there's not much to talk about. Even though we have Hurricane Leslie and now post-tropical cyclone Kirk, you'll see Kirk will eventually head towards France here. The time frame on that's going to be Wednesday afternoon local time. And no longer tropical, you can see it's opened up in just a quick moving, powerful cyclone at this point. Here is the track, and you can see it's over cooler water and moving more fast, or quicker. Here's a look at Leslie, still holding on here, still a Category 1. There's some wind shear hitting from the southeast, or from the southwest, I should say. I'll get my direction straight. But you can see it does not look like it'll impact land, and in fact, is expected to try to dissipate before the end of the week. And then we've got to keep an eye down here on the Caribbean. We may not be finished after Milton, unfortunately. You can see here, this is Milton on the ensembles, but as we get to the weekend, we now start to see potential some slow development here by Sunday again in the southwestern Caribbean. Now, it's way far out at this point, but guess where everything ends up going? You can see here, we've got very low wind shear over the northwest Caribbean. We've got rising air coming back. Right now it's sinking down there, but it'll go back to a rising phase. And by the time we get to next week, there's a possibility of something in this general area again. I don't want to scare folks. It's way too far out at this point. Just something you've got to be mindful of if you have travel plans ahead, that we may not be finished here in Cuba, the Bahamas, Florida, Jamaica, and the Northwest Caribbean. The GFS model just coming in now. We've seen some flipping and flopping on this model, so it's going to look possibly quite a bit different. You can see this particular run keeps it down here. It's got a stronger trough coming down, but that is no guarantee. As we all know, nothing is guaranteed. The model run before and the ones before it had it down there, but got it pulled northward and up towards South Florida and the Bahamas here later next week. So we're going to see a lot more back and forth on that, and I don't have an answer on that yet. It's too far away. But there is potential for yet another hurricane in the Northwest Caribbean at some point next week into next weekend. So I hope everybody is safe. Please heed all the warnings that you can. This is a major storm. This is a potentially historic storm. And I just thank you for your time and for trusting me today. I want to give all the honor and glory to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. This is a stressful time, but I want to remind you all that God is good and he still wants us to turn to him and repent. Paul tells the church of Philippi, Philippians 4, 6, and 7, do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. This is hard. I can't quit. This is hard. This is hard forecasting this stuff. I really care about the people in the path of the storm. But I'm going to say this right now. We need to tell our problems how big our God is. We need to have faith in God. He will not stop the storm, but he can comfort us. We can present requests to him. We can pray. And I truly believe he's going to bring us together after these storms. We're seeing that right now in the Carolinas and Florida after Helene. People are responding, being kind to each other, taking care of each other, no matter what we believe or who we vote for. And that is God shining through us. Romans 8:28, that God causes all things to come together for the good of those who believe in him. And I truly believe he's going to continue to be a good God despite natural disasters that we just cannot control. And my thoughts and prayers are with everybody in this storm. I'm not here to profit off of folks, but just know the money that I'm collecting from my earnings with YouTube, a lot of that's going to go back to help those that have been affected in the disasters. That's what I want to do, is bless other folks. So please have a safe Monday, and I'll catch up with you all again tomorrow. Take care.